All right.
Okay, well, I'm Marian Barkus, and I want to welcome you. There will be a few others coming in as we go along, I'm sure. This is a new time for our webinars. Typically, we do a noon hour presentation. NAMI Grand Rapids Area Education Outreach Committee decided to try a new time with Dr. David Nathan for this presentation on um, video games and mental health. And so it's sort of an experiment for us. We have 60 some registered, and we'll see how many people attend tonight. As usual, our webinars are recorded, so beware of that as we proceed with the presentation. And know that they will be loaded. A link will be loaded onto our webpage, and I have added our webpage to the chat and allowed everyone to see the chat. The webpage will get you to the NAMI Grand Rapids area website where we have the link for the recording. So you can see not only this webinar, but any of the others that we've done over the last 3 years. So thank you all for coming this evening. We really appreciate that. We especially tried to reach out to parents, grandparents, teachers, and we welcome both parents, lay, and professionals alike. So NAMI's mission, as you know, is to provide education, like we're doing this evening, support and advocacy for children and adults with mental illness and their families. At that website that I gave you the link for, you will also find information, resources, a place to become a member if you wish to for NAMI or to make a donation. And so we encourage you to visit that even after your presence here this evening. The chat is open. I'm going to hand this off to Kelly Chandler, who's one of our board members now, and she will introduce Dr. Nathan.
Thank you, Marian. Yes, I am a newer NAMI board member. However, I was a board member quite a few years ago. So very happy to be back talking about mental health in our area. And I'm very excited to introduce our speaker tonight. He and I happen to work for the same organization, and I had the pleasure of hearing this exact presentation during a grand rounds. And I was very excited to bring it back to the Grand Rapids area. So I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I did. As we were preparing for this presentation, I actually went back and listened to it again, and it was just as interesting the second time. So I'm really hoping that you get some things out of it. Dr. David Nathan is a father and licensed psychologist from St. Paul, Minnesota. He is the father of twin 12-year-old girls. He is the East Region outpatient lead psychologist for Allina Health and has a side practice offering ADHD and autism assessments as well. He works primarily with children, teens, young adults, and parents on issues including ADHD, autism, anger management, addiction, depression, anxiety, adoption, and trauma. He grew up playing video games in the 80s and 90s, but spent several years away from video games when his children were growing up. He was shocked to see how they had changed when he started playing video games again in the late 2010s. Dr. Nathan feels that it is unrealistic to expect children and adults to avoid screens and video games completely, and feels that education and practicing healthy screen use is the best approach to dealing with addictive technology. Besides being a father and a psychologist, Dr. Nathan enjoys reading, playing piano, spending time with friends, and traveling. Dr. Nathan will discuss the history of video games, how they've been developed to be more addictive. He'll explain the science of video game addiction, as well as clinical intervention skills for people experiencing video game addiction. We will have Q&A at the end, and feel free to put your question in the chat as it comes up, and we will try to address them at the end. And yeah, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. David Nathan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I love NAMI. I think it's such a phenomenal organization. I think Minnesota's NAMI's chapter is perhaps the best in the country. And it is real a pleasure to get to talk about this topic. It's one that's very near and dear to my heart. I work with a lot of young people, and video games, as we'll talk about, is a gigantic pastime among young people and adults, and we'll talk more about that too. Kelly, you gave a really nice introduction. I really appreciate that. Let's see here. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So I think it's important because if you know much about video game addiction, you know much about kind of the video game controversies. There's a lot of times people say, "Oh, if anyone's critical of video games, they just hate video games. They've never played video games. They don't know anything about video games." I know all about video games. I love video games. I played video games since I was a kid. I continue to play video games today. And video games have changed. I think, and I still enjoy video games today, but calling what we use today on whichever platform system we use a video game is very similar to calling kind of a modern SUV with the same name as a Ford Model T, because the video games that I grew up playing and the arcade games that I grew up playing in the 80s are a completely different breed at an evolutionary scale to what we have today. So that's kind of what I want to talk about, because I think a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents, a lot of adults in general, when they look at video games, like, oh, the graphics are nicer. You know, just it's same Legend of Zelda, same Super Mario Brothers. It's just it looks a little more polished and a little bit more interesting. And I would argue it's way deeper than that, way more, far more sophisticated than that. The sophistication is not just in the graphics, it's in every aspect of how video games work. And basically, what I took when my children were young, I stopped playing video games for several years, and then I kind of came back to it during COVID, and it was very different. And I kind of got interested in this, and because video game addiction is such a big deal, I decided I would start kind of looking into this, and did a lot of research, read a lot of papers, read a lot of books, and this presentation is kind of a culmination of that work. Um, so basically, here's kind of the summary of what I'm going to talk about the next hour. I'm going to talk about who I am. What exactly is video game addiction, internet gaming disorder, in terms of kind of the diagnosis and what is that? How big are video games? I think this will be really surprising. Why are video games addictive? What's going on? What's going on with the design of video games that make them to be that way? And why did they become? How and why did they become so addictive? And finally, what can we do about it? So there's that. Next slide, please. All right, and kind of click through here. Sorry, there are a couple words here. They'll show up. All right, so here's me. I'm a licensed psychologist, father of twin daughters, work primarily with children, teens, and their parents, and a couple more. I like the video game. So if you know the game Fortnite, extremely popular game. I have beaten Fortnite. Fortnite is a game where you run around an island against 100 other people, and if you're the last one standing, you get a screen that looks like this. So this is a character that my daughters really like. It's a comic book character, and she looks like a kind of Firebird, and my girls love her, so that's the one we use most of the time. I would argue I'm not just a casual video game player, but I play them and I win. And next slide. All right, so if you know Minecraft, I have beaten the Ender Dragon. If you know anything about the Ender Dragon, it's about as complicated as getting a pretty sophisticated Boy Scout merit badge. There's a lot of stuff you need to do in Minecraft to defeat the Ender Dragon. So this is the castle that my daughters and I have as our base. Up above the gate is the Ender Dragon egg, which you can only get if you actually defeat the Ender Dragon. So anyone who knows video games, I feel like I've established my credibility as a video game player, fan, and pretty kind of a power player, power gamer. Next slide, please. So what is video game addiction? This is really complicated because the pace of published kind of expectations is very slow compared to the world we live in. according to the DSM-5, as of March 2022, they said this is something that we need to do further research on. We're not entirely sure what constitutes video game addiction. They weren't quite ready to give it a full-on diagnosis yet. The ICD, the DSM is used, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual is used primarily in the United States, and it's kind of being overtaken by the ICD-10, which is used internationally. And the ICD-10 codes use all of the DSM codes, but it also uses additional codes beyond what's in the DSM. And they included a gaming disorder diagnosis. It's characterized by impaired control over gaming, increased priority given to gaming over other activities to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities, and continuation or escalation of gaming despite occurrence of negative consequences. So this pattern, what they're talking about, kind of using video games, is very similar to all the other definitions of addiction, whether you're talking about drugs or alcohol or gambling or various other things. Basically, it's like someone's use is kind of out of their control. They're continuing to do this activity even when it is causing them problems. It's keeping them from doing other things in their life. So that's when we would say that that activity is disordered. And I think it's a pretty decent definition of video game addiction. Next slide, please. So even though the DSM, kind of the American standard definer of mental illness and symptoms, has not defined it yet. Other people have moved ahead. So we've got Cleveland Clinic. They have come out with more specific examples of symptoms. So they're talking about poor performance at school, work, or household responsibilities as a result of video game playing. Withdrawal symptoms such as sadness, anxiety, or irritability when games are taken away or gaming isn't possible. A need to spend more and more time playing video games to get the same level of enjoyment. Giving up previously enjoyed activities and/or social responsibilities, and giving up a social relationships due to gaming, being unable to reduce playing time or having unsuccessful attempts to quit gaming despite the negative consequences, lying to family members. And this is actually a big part of addiction. If folks know about addiction, lying is a big part of addiction, even though it's not in the DSM. But lying to other people about how much screen time video games are being used, decline of personal hygiene or grooming due to excessive video gaming, use of video games as a way to escape stressful situations at work or at school to avoid conflicts, and using video games to relieve negative moods such as guilt or hopelessness. I have a very, very good friend, a lawyer who is a recovering alcoholic, and he has the best quote, I think, about addiction. Of all the classes and books I've read, he said, drinking was never the problem. Drinking was a solution to a bigger problem. And I think when we're talking about addiction, I think video games can also be very similar. It can cause all these problems, but usually the thing that addiction is covering up is the worst problem in that person's mind who's suffering from the addiction. That problem and the problems that it causes are small potatoes compared to whatever other thing or other things are eating away at that person. Next slide. So, okay, are video games a big deal? Let's see. I don't know if people can respond in the chat. I suspect people, I have 12-year-old daughters, so I know who a person named Taylor Swift is. Does anyone not know who Taylor Swift is? Any hands? Anyone does not know who Taylor Swift is? I guess everyone does. Okay. Taylor Swift had a small concert tour. It started in 2023 called the Eras Tour. Pretty big deal. Made more money than any other concert tour. I think it ended in 2004 or 2024. Made more money than any other concert tour in history. But in 2023, there's another video game that was released called Baldur's Gate 3. It's a third game in a pretty popular series. A lot of people really like this video game. If people have opportunity in the chat, I'd like to hear, how many people are familiar with the game Baldur's Gate 3? If you can type it in the chat, I'd love to see. Okay, no, okay, not me. Anyone else? I mean, it's not the world's biggest game. It's a pretty popular game, but it's not the world's biggest game. Okay, someone's heard of it. Someone's heard of it. Okay. Nope, nope, nope. Okay, all right. Well, here's a question for you. Biggest concert series, biggest concert tour in history, maybe in the history of the world. Which one made more money? Baldur's Gate 3 or the Eras Tour? And I think you guys can figure out Baldur's Gate 3 made more money. A video game that is pretty popular, not the world's most popular video game, but probably one of the top 5 video games in 2023, made more money than the Eras Tour. Video games are extremely, extremely, extremely big business. Let's see. Can you click through to get, there's a couple of little, yep, here we go. Super yes. All right, here we go. All right, next slide, please. All right, so in terms of how much time people spend playing video games, how much money is spent on video games, and how many people play video games are hands down the largest pastime in the United States and in the world by a lot. So using numbers that are published from 2023, about half the world plays video games. Slightly less than half the world plays video games, making billions and billions of dollars every year. Next slide, please. The video game market is bigger than any other recreation market in the United States, with the exception of fast food restaurants. And I would argue that fast food restaurants have an advantage because human beings have to eat. So everything else, the NFL, video games in 2023, $114 billion. The entire NFL, 17 billion. All forms of gambling in the United States, this is a kind of a pretty careful estimate, but all forms of gambling in the United States, less than half of what video games do. Streaming music, not even close. Film, not even close. Sit down restaurants, not even 3/4 of as much money in sit down restaurants as spent in video games. Video games are absolutely gigantic. It is the biggest form of entertainment we have by a lot. Next slide, please. So in the United States, about 66% of the population play video games. And the thing is, there's kind of this idea that only kind of nerdy guys play video games, or nerdy guys kind of make up the vast majority of video game players, and that is no longer the case. And I'm jumping ahead of myself. The majority of video game players are under 17, but not by a lot. People over 18 in the United States are pretty close. It's almost even who plays video games in the United States between young people and old people. And one thing that happens with video games, we'll talk about this more too, is they've really broken up they make video games based on demographics. Kids who play Minecraft are a completely different group of people than who play Baldur's Gate, the game that I mentioned before, who are a completely different group of people who play Candy Crush, kind of a match 3 game on phones and various other games like that. So just like there's all kinds of products out there that people kind of design and sell to certain segments of the population and kind of go after different markets, video games have absolutely done that too. So that's one of the reasons why video games have been so successful and so many people play video games. If you can think of something that'd be fun to do on a screen, somebody is working very hard on making that product and getting it to you. Next slide, please. All right, so tons of people are playing video games. Here's a question: how many people are actually addicted? So there's lots of research and they're trying to figure this out. Cleveland Clinic in a study said that they think between 1.7 and 10% of people who play video games are addicted. Cohn says about 10%. Delamere says about 3 to 4%. Wittek said about 1.7%. Yu and Cho said of adolescents, just adolescents, so people between the ages of 10 and 18, 6.9%. And so we're talking about, if these numbers on the left side here, if these numbers are the percentage, how many millions of people in the United States would be suffering from video game addiction? And so I put those numbers on the right here. And the Software Entertainment Association, which is the kind of professional association that represents video game manufacturers and video game makers, they say common sense and objective research proves that video games are not addictive. And this one of the things I want to get through in this presentation is that right now there are no laws protecting children or anybody from video games. In the United States anyway. Europe has passed tons of laws. China has passed tons of laws outlawing various kind of ways for video games to operate and limiting how much time children and adults, but especially children, can play video games in their countries. The United States has not. This is a very addictive product, and is really up to parents and caregivers to protect the kids, because we do not have laws and to stop it, and the companies that make these products and make money off these products are not limiting themselves at all, and they're denying that video games are addictive as they continue to make them more addictive. Next slide, please. All right. So I wasn't a psychology major in college. I was actually an economics major. And one of the things that's very big in economics is that people respond to incentives. If there's a tax break on something, or if there's a credit that you can get, people are more likely to do that. And it's a really cool way for the government to get people to do certain things, like buy a house, and the interest on your house is tax deductible. Interest on your mortgage anyway is tax deductible. So just fundamentally. People, there's something that our brains love about cause and effect. There's a toy that we often give infants when they're maybe like 7 to 12 months old, where it's kind of like a rectangular box, and there's a bunch of little activities like you can push a button, or you dial a dial, or move a slide over, and when you do that thing, a little character's head pops out of a little door, like one of the Mickey Mouse characters or Donald Duck or something like that. And kids love that toy. The amount of delight and joy that you see in the child's face when they're doing that. Sadly for them, they're rarely going to be that happy over the course of their life. That is one of the happiest things that a person can experience, that level of delight and joy. And that shows us that basically cause and effect. If I do this thing happens. This is something that shows up very early in human beings. There's all kind of things, there's all kinds of skills and interests and kind of drives that don't show up immediately. They show up kind of later on in life as we get older. We become aware of more things like that. But cause and effect is something that is super fundamental to our brains, and we love it. And video games are all about cause and effect. We like things that are shiny and new. We like power fantasies. I remember years ago when I was in college. Uh, there's a game on the N64. I can't remember. There's a snowboarding game, and all the people who are snowboarding look ridiculously cool. And by today's definition, the graphics, the characters don't look that cool. But back then they look super cool. I was like, this is crazy. I ski, and well, I've tried snowboarding a couple times. People who actually go skiing and snowboarding don't actually look nearly this cool. Years later was, oh, no one wants to look like a regular person when they're skiing and snowboarding. Everyone wants to look like, a friggin' model. And that's what these video games do. It's even when you're doing something like skiing or snowboarding, even when you're not, trying to be a movie star stealing cars and stuff like that in Grand Theft Auto. Video games very much make people feel like they're just total amazing superheroes or really cunning criminals. And it is a power fantasy. We like to solve puzzles. We like to spend time with people kind of like us. We like to solve misery. We like to solve mysteries. We like to be heroes, and we like not to hurt. And there's a video game bargain. If you spend time with me, I will give you all of these things. It's a very, very powerful motivator, and it's only gotten more. And these things were around when I was a kid, and it's only gotten more strong since then. Next slide, please. So as I was doing my research, there's this term that kept on showing up over and over and over, and it wasn't really defined. So I finally looked it up myself, this concept of limbic capitalism. The limbic refers to the limbic system in our limbic nervous system in our brains, which is part of our bodies, and specifically the nervous system that regulates emotion, fight, flight, freeze, memory, pleasure, things like that. So basically, one of the things that's happened is that companies have figured out, forget appealing to someone just logically. What are things that I can do with my products that really get to that limbic system, that really set that off? How can I make that go bonkers? Because the limbic system is there's parts of our brain. If someone can appeal to those things, we might not consciously think like, oh man, I really like doing this. But part of our brain kind of subconsciously is going to be just drawn towards it really, really, really hard. And it's going to be very difficult. It's almost like gravity pulling us down. We're gonna have to work hard to keep from going in that direction, because our brain likes getting those rewards. So it's getting those rewards. We might not even be aware that's happening. And that's one of the ways that video games are designed to really appeal to our limbic system. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So one of the issues with video games is that video games are addicted to everybody. If people have ADHD, they're far higher risk of becoming addicted to video games. One of the issues with ADHD is just impulsive behavior. People kind of like an idea popping into their head, and then they do it. Well, video games really marry the idea of, oh, there's something you want to do. Here's a reward for it. So it's not simply like, oh, shoot, I kind of did things out of order, or I should have, made sure I knew what I was doing or knew what the name of the person is before I called them on the phone. you know, normally impulsive behavior is going to get us in trouble. In video games, impulsive behavior is rewarded, and it's rewarded very, very constantly and with nice rewards. So that's going to reinforce that behavior. And so when people are done playing video games, they're going to be they're going to even have a harder time dealing with impulsive behavior. Next slide, please. And another issue, dark patterns. So dark patterns are a way of designing something that if you've ever tried to cancel an internet subscription, if you ever tried to cancel Netflix or something like that, they make it really hard for you to do it. Once upon a time, you know, if you want to cancel one of these things, you just click on, you know, account cancel. And now you got to dig around in there. You got to find where did they put it? And they'll say like, hey, are you sure you want to cancel? Why do you want to cancel? If you don't cancel, we'll give you this discount. You know, they do all these things to make it much more difficult for you to do something which you want to do. Dark patterns are something else that show up in a lot of these video games. So once upon a time when I bought Super Mario Brothers, for example, on my Nintendo back in the 80s, if I bought Super Mario Brothers, I owned Super Mario Brothers. Today, video games are often given away, but if you buy a video game, there's going to be several more things to buy beyond what you just got. And part of it too is, we'll talk about this a little bit, video games have gotten so big, they want people to play constantly. So if you show up every day or you show up every couple of hours and play this game, you get a reward. If you miss a couple days or miss a couple hours, oh man, you missed a bunch of rewards. You could have gotten a bunch of in-game coins or you know, special weapons or special other powers or something like that. So by not playing, you're not going to be as successful at the video game as everyone else who's playing more constantly. So these kind of steps to make it difficult to leave, to punish you for not being there, or if you get all your friends to sign up, you're going to get a reward by doing things like that. Basically, dark patterns reward behavior that the makers of the video games want people to use at the expense of the people who are playing the video games who may not actually personally benefit from these things or might be worse off, but they're doing it because these dark patterns are there. Next slide, please. All right, so there's a really great website called darkpattern.games, and it looks like somebody is kind of put this thing together where you can kind of look up various video games and see what dark patterns are in them. It looks kind of like a volunteer effort. It's not something that is kind of an industry or a business or something, but people have logged in there, and you can look up video games there and see what kind of dark patterns are there, so you can have an idea of what you're getting into. Next slide, please. Oh, so, and there's different kinds of dark patterns. So there's temporal dark patterns where basically if you want to get to a certain level, you can't do it that day. You've got to keep on playing several days in a row for you to reach an accomplishment. There are other times where you have to do something over and over and over and over and over and over and over in order to get access, or you're stuck. If you want to play more of the game, you've got to pay some money and then you can play more. Otherwise, you've got to wait for a while. So that's temporal dark patterns. Then monetary dark patterns. There's some games where if you pay money, you're just going to have better equipment. You're going to have your character is going to be more powerful. You're going to have more options available to you. And something else that a lot of games do is video games rarely have their own currency within US dollars. They'll have like, if you're playing Mortal Kombat, there'll be like Mortal Kombat coins. If you're playing Minecraft, there's Minecraft coins. If you're playing Fortnite, there's these Fortnite bucks. But and so it might be like 700 Fortnite bucks to a US dollar. So when you're playing the game currency, it's kind of hard to tell exactly how much money am I spending here. Next item, please. Psychological dark patterns. So as people are spending more time in games, it might be like, well, I've spent like $50 in this game, or I spent $100 or $500 or something like that. I can't quit because I'd lose all that money. That's the sunken cost fallacy, and that's another way that video games kind of get people pulled in. There'll be a lot of collectibles within a video game. Do you want to keep on going? Don't leave. You only got a couple things left. So you'll see a lot of times there'll be things that are kind of groups. Can you finish off all the items in this particular set or something like that? That's a big part of it. And then there's kind of this leveling treadmill. It's like the game tells you you're at a higher level, you're doing better, but basically you're doing the same stuff. It just tells you you're at a higher level. Next slide, please. And social dark patterns, kind of doing these, like I said before, encouraging people to sign their friends up, or encouraging their friends. If everyone plays this game today, then everyone gets a reward. But if people don't play the game, then people don't get the reward. There's one of the things that can happen is another thing that can happen is that people can act really rudely or nasty, or just be really vicious to each other. You see this on internet message boards and kind of comment sections in news websites where people get into big fights with each other. sadly, the facts are a lot of those companies, they want the fights because people come in and are more likely to go see, ooh, what did this person say? Ooh, what did this person say? And then that means more people are clicking and more people are coming and watching the content. And that is actually bringing people in, even though we're kind of seeing the worst sides of people when they get into fights with each other on the internet. This can be verbally within video games or over kind of like gameplay audio features, or it can be in message boards. I think that's it for this slide. Next slide, dude. Okay, so an important understanding of one an important thing to understand about game design is something called the gameplay loop. Basically, the gameplay loop is that I do something relatively easy. There'll be a little really easy, and it just takes a second to do it. There'll be a quick, easy reward. I do something that takes a little bit longer to do in a video game. There'll be kind of a medium, better reward. And then I do something that takes a long time to do. There's like the very best reward. And video games really kind of benefit from having kind of combination of the small, medium, and large loops. And this is a game that I loved when I was a kid. The Legend of Zelda was on the original Nintendo. It came out in 1986. Next slide, please. So here is the entire world of The Legend of Zelda from 1986, and you don't actually see the entire world all at once on your screen. Basically, the screen in Legend of Zelda is about, I'm trying to remember here, about 12 screens across and 8 screens up. And your screen, your computer only, your TV monitor would only show kind of one section of the map at once. You can walk all the way across east to west on this map, probably in a little bit over a minute or two. And most of that would be the screen actually kind of drawing itself as you go from screen to screen. You can go up and down in about a minute. And this is the entire world. And one of the things that happens in Legend of Zelda is that you're this little boy named Link, and you're trying to save this Princess Zelda from this evil monster Ganon. There are monsters on every screen, and every time you kill one, there's a chance it's going to drop some money, or they're going to drop some bombs, which are weapons you can use, or they're kind of like little trinkets. And those are kind of like, that's just a small loop. Can you get past the page? Can you kill the monsters on that particular screen? That's your small game loop. There are also 9 dungeons where you got to kind of explore the dungeon and defeat a big boss and defeat the monsters inside the dungeon. And when you get to the end of the dungeon, you get a really nice treasure that's going to help you explore more of the game and make you much more powerful. And you also get a piece of this Triforce. When you get all 8 pieces of the Triforce, you're able to get into the 9th dungeon, which is where the evil Ganon is, and he's keeping Zelda prisoner. Once you defeat Ganon and save Zelda, that's the large loops. You've got the small loops on the individual screens. You've got the medium loops, which are the dungeons where you kind of slowly get more and more powerful until you're able to get to the last dungeon and defeat Ganon. And then you defeat Ganon and you beat the game. So that's Legend of Zelda. People love this game. This is one of the most popular games on a Nintendo Entertainment System. Someone who knows what they're doing, even if someone didn't know what they're doing, they could probably beat this game in 8 or 9 hours just by kind of like futzing around and kind of figuring out how this game works. A person like there's a thing now called speed running where people try and see how quickly they can get through. I think a speedrunner can get through this entire game if they know exactly what they're doing. They go in exactly the right order in probably 6 or 7 minutes. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what a regular screen looks like. So you see, this is the individual screen. You don't see the whole map. Next slide, or next item. And this is what it looks like. So you kind of get these rewards. At the beginning of the game, you see your screen that looks very empty. At the end of the game, you have all this gear and you have all these weapons. And it feels good. It feels like you've got kind of like, look at how much more advanced I am. Look how much I've accomplished. So the game is rewarding you. This is like 1986 level sophistication. But still, I remember being a kid and feeling like, man, I'm a hero. Look at all this stuff. Next slide. All right, so just before COVID, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out. This has got to be like the 20th version of the Legend of Zelda game because there's been a Legend of Zelda game almost every year or two ever since 1986. Legend of Zelda was on the most sophisticated system that we had at that point, the Nintendo Switch. And it is much, 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 much bigger than the original Legend of Zelda. Next slide, please. Same deal. You've got Link and you got Zelda. This time, because it's 2017, Zelda's not a damsel of distress. She's actually fighting Ganon too. You still control Link, but you got the same fundamental characters. Next picture. And this time, Ganon, it looks way more scary. He's gigantic, and he's your final boss. Next slide. And this time, instead of having kind of just a couple loops, we have a ton of loops. And we also have these little side quests. You meet these people in villages, you meet these people who are having problems along the way, their cart broke down or something like that, and they ask you to help them. So there are let's see here, probably about 75 or more kind of mini quests besides just trying to defeat Ganon and kind of get through the dungeons in the game. There's all these little quests that you can do that take up time. Next slide. And then there are 120 like little mini shrines where you kind of go through and defeat these and kind of solve these puzzles and things like that. And every time you do that, you get like a little reward. Next slide. And these stupid things called Korok seeds, which are kind of all over the world's gigantic map. And I think, I don't know, maybe like 700 or 800 of those things. If you find those, every time you find a couple of those, you get a reward. And here's the entire map of Legend of Zelda. It is just gigantic. Or this Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game, in order to cross from east to west, it would probably take you almost 45 minutes because the game is huge, and going north to south about the same distance. So part of the deal is video games are so much bigger now. When I was a kid, if you had, if a game had 128K, that was a massive game. That game is gigantic. And that was really pushing the limits of what technology was available and people could make on video games. Today, we're not talking about kilobytes or megabytes. We're talking about gigabytes. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes. And because games are so big, because there's so much storage space now and computers are so much faster, we have such more sophisticated computer chips, video games themselves can be far, far, far bigger. So instead of, so this is a game, and I played this with my daughters during COVID. This is a game, I think we put about 70 or 80 hours into this game when we finally beat the final boss. We didn't get through half of the content in this game. I think the game tells you how complete are you, how many quests have you completed, how much stuff have you found. I think when we got to the end, we had solved 52, we completed 52% of the game. So half the game wasn't even done yet. Next slide, please. And this is what the game looks like. It is absolutely gorgeous. It is, you run around and instead of seeing kind of those like very kind of pixelated screens, anything you see in this game, any place you can see, you can go there. You can climb up the mountains. You can walk through the forests. You get this cool little paraglider and you can jump off mountains and kind of glide down to the bottom, which is really cool. And it's just epic. And basically it takes about as much time if the world is huge, and if you were actually walking through the world in real life, it takes about as long for Link to walk to these places as it was. So the game, instead of being 12 screens wide by 8 screens high, this game is actually several square miles. Next slide. And here's Link riding on a horse. There's a goblin also riding a horse trying to get him. Next slide. And this is one of my daughters, and I love doing this, getting to the top of a mountain and kind of gliding down on the paraglider. And one of the other things going on in this game is it's gorgeous. It has a day-night cycle. So while you're like with old games, you just kind of played the way it was. This game actually, and the game changes, like scarier, bigger, more tough monsters come out at night. And you get to see the sun rise, you get to see the sun set, as the sun kind of goes across the sky, it changes the shadows. So it is a very, very, very dynamic, beautiful game. And that's intentional. One of the things that happened back in the early 2000s, video game manufacturers were able to look at video games and look at kind of the human eye and figure out what are the appealing colors and what are color combinations that the eye likes. And they figured out how to make video games. This is actually before high definition televisions, which made it even more intense. They figured out ways to make screens on the video game screens and what we see in video games more appealing to our eyes than actual nature. And one of the reasons that video games can be so compelling to people is because that's just baked into video games. That's technology that's 20 years old now. If you're watching someone play a video game that involves cars driving, there's tons of kind of race games and things like that out there. You are going to see, and sometimes these games are actually set in real locations. You're going to see the most beautiful day if you're racing in Paris, for example. You're going to see the most beautiful day in Paris that's probably in real life, and no day in Paris is going to be as beautiful as the day that you're experiencing when you play the game. Or if you're playing, there's a game that is part of one version is in London, and there's another sequel that's set in, I think, somewhere in Mexico, and then they have kind of all these exotic locations, and that actually and these places actually exist, and it is absolutely gorgeous to our eyes. And it makes sense that our eyes would kind of be pulled into that because this has been decoded, this has been figured out, and this is built into games. Next slide, please. All right. So how did video games get to be this way, and why are they so addictive, and what happened? It took a lot of effort. And it was intentional. Next slide. Video games have really evolved. So in the 1970s and 1990s, video games were pretty expensive. Like a quarter was what you had to do. And it's something that's to understand. Video games were always there to make money. That was always the reason video games existed. They're just way better at doing it now. If you wanted to play video games, you generally had to go to an arcade. Nintendo did research and they found out that kids would play video games at that point for about 2.5 hours tops. And they told the people making video games for them, if you're making a game, it needs to be a game that kids can beat in 2.5 hours, or else it has to have a save feature or a password or something like that so people can continue their game later. But if it takes longer than that to beat the game, kids are just never going to beat it. They're going to get bored and go do something else. You had to go purchase games at stores. Another big thing, games would end. When you saved the princess in Legend of Zelda, you could start the game over again, but the game was over. You had done everything, and you kind of start from nothing. Today, games do not have an end state, and there's a reason for that. I'll talk about that in a second. Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you would buy the entire game. If I bought Super Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda or something like that, or Sonic the Hedgehog, when I bought that cartridge, when I bought that disc, I owned the entire game. There wasn't going to be additional kind of after purchase hacks or things like that that you can get. Video games didn't have dark patterns in the 1970s. It's just kind of people playing video games and kind of like having like just things are pretty straightforward. Today, video games are free. And there are actually stores or online stores for video games. There's one called the Epic Store, and I checked, and every Thursday they have a new video game that they give away for free. Today's video game, and they give it away for a week. Today's video game is actually a really sophisticated, it's a $70 Jurassic Park simulation game where you get to kind of design your Jurassic Park and figure out which dinosaurs go in which place. I go and I download these games. I have hundreds of these games at this point. Most of them I've never even downloaded. Probably 98% I've never even actually downloaded onto my computer. They just live in my account. But you can get really good games for no money whatsoever. And the reason Epic does that is because Epic is competing with another game store called Steam. Steam is the undisputed champion video game store, and Epic wants people to go to its store. So if people just show up at their store every week, they will give you a video game. It used to be, basically, if you wanted to play good video games, you had to go to the arcade, because if you're old enough to remember Atari games were nowhere near as good as arcade games. But today the systems are so sophisticated that we can have at home. We don't have to go out to arcades. We can play these games in our living rooms. We can have these games on our phones. Games today are not limited to 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. Games today, they're designed to be addictive. If someone, and they test these games before they release them, if someone wants to stop playing a AAA title, which is kind of like the most, the biggest game that companies try and make, if someone wants to play these, if someone wants to quit a game in less than 8 hours, the game is not considered to be addictive enough. It would be a failure, and they're going to go refine what's going on in that game so that people want to keep on doing it until they literally have to go to the bathroom, they have to eat, their biological needs as a human being take over, and they have to get ready for that video game. So that's kind of the standard now. We don't have to buy games at Best Buy or Target or any place else now. We can just download them right to our computer. You never buy video games. You never buy a complete video game anymore. Video games, this model of having add-ons later on is so baked into the video game industry that even if you spend $70 on a video game, there'll be more things to buy. And there's DLCs, which stands for downloadable content. So there's a game, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, that I really loved when I was a kid. I still love. And you're a boxer and you box all these different characters. Today, back then, if you bought the game, there are no additional characters. There's one character that was you, and there's all the other characters that you fight against. Today, a game like that, there would be a bunch of different versions. Do you want to look like this? Do you want to look like this? Do you want to look like that? What color boxers do you want to wear? What color gloves do you want to wear? These would all be additional kind of upsells that you would buy once you had the video game. And it's like, oh, here's like the first 10 people that you're fighting against. If you want to buy this pack, here's a bunch of other people that you could fight against. It'd probably be celebrities. And here's another pack of another group of celebrities or other group group of superheroes or something like that that you can buy. So basically, kind of the video game that we buy today, either if you purchase it or if you get it for free, that's just the launch pad. That's kind of stage one for video games. And video games today, you usually don't even launch the video game by itself. First, you launch kind of like an app that launches the video games, and usually that app itself is a store. So if you play a game that's run by Electronic Arts on a computer, you open up the Electronic Arts app, and it's like, "Hi, you're on your way to go play The Sims." Well, that's nice. Here's a bunch of other games, and here's a bunch of add-ons to The Sims that you don't have yet. You've got to click through that to get to The Sims. Um, if you launch a PlayStation or Xbox, you're going to see like, hey, here's a bunch of games that we know you like because you like playing games like this. So just so you know, you can download these games anytime, and then nice to see you. You go play your game. Um, One of the other things too is uh, it used to be very straightforward about what you were buying. It used to, when if someone was buying something, they would just get what they wanted. Today, video games have gotten sophisticated. They use something called loot boxes, where it's like, oh, you want to get this particular item in the video game? That's cool. Well, you can buy a chance to get it. So it's only going to cost you $2 or $3, and you get like a key, and you buy the key, and then you open the box, and you can see what's in the box, and maybe you get the thing you want, maybe you don't. But instead of just kind of straight up straightforward getting what you want, this loot box thing, which is illegal in Europe, is all over the place in the United States, and it makes it. And a lot of people talk about this as kind of getting kids into gambling, basically, because they don't necessarily know what they're getting. They got to keep on purchasing these keys to open the box until they get the thing that they want. And then dark patterns, as I mentioned before, dark patterns are all over video games. Next slide, please. All right, so how do we get here? Really briefly, 1971, Computer Space and Pong come out. They're kind of novelty items. 25, they were 25 cents back then, which in 2025 dollars is about $8 to play one of those games. So they're pretty expensive, but they're novel and they were interesting. It was kind of high tech. And that was kind of cool. In 1976, the Fairchild F device was released, and basically it was a way that people could have a cartridge and plug it into a box on a TV at their house, and they could switch out these cartridges and play different games on it. 1977, the Atari 2600 comes out, very, very popular system, and they released Fairchild. You had to buy the games from Fairchild, so the company made the device and they made the cartridges. Atari, they made the device and they made some games, but they said anyone who wants to make games for us can do it. 1978 comes out. There's an arcade game called Space Invaders, a killer app. It has a score. You can it shows you how high you've got. So now people are competing against each other to have the highest score. 1979, Asteroids comes out. Shows you how dated I am. When you have a high score, you can put your initials on the high score list, and that was kind of a killer feature of that game. Next slide, please. 1985, the Nintendo comes to the United States. The Nintendo had been released in Japan. It was very popular over there. And basically, it was extremely, extremely, extremely sophisticated system compared to what was available in the United States, what was available all over the world. Super Mario Brothers was the launch title that came with the game, and a lot of people, and I can get into this if someone is interested, but I'm probably not going to. Super Mario Brothers might be the most innovative video game ever created because of all the things that were going on in this video game. It made for a really fantastic launch title because it was just incredible. One of the things I think is really cool about Super Mario Brothers in previous games, if you push a jump button, the person always jumped exactly the same way. But with Super Mario Brothers, if you push the button really hard, Mario would jump really high. If you just tap the button, he would jump just a little bit. And there are all kinds of like teeny little nuanced things like that in Super Mario Brothers that made it really, really, really popular. Something else that's really cool about Mario that was ahead of its time is the first level, World 1-1, teaches you how to play the game. Video games have a visual language that if you understand the visual language of the game, it's telling you what's going on. If you don't understand the visual language, it can be kind of confusing. What's going on in this game? But Mario, it gave you different obstacles, it gave you different enemies, and it basically shows you if you do this, your character's going to die. If you do this, you're going to be able to keep on going through the level. And it kind of starts relatively easy, and by the time you get through all of World 1-1, which takes about 20 seconds, you are going to have a really good understanding of the visual language of the game. You're going to be able to play the rest of the game without a problem. Next slide, please. Video games continue to get more and more successful. The Sega so Nintendo was really popular with children under the age of kind of younger than teenagers in the 80s. And Sega wanted kind of a piece of this. They said, we're going to make some more kind of gritty, more violent, more kind of adult, teenager games. So you have Sonic the Hedgehog. Instead of Mario being this nice, sweet guy, Sonic was a hedgehog who had a lot more of an attitude. He kind of glare at people and stuff like that. It was very, very popular. And what the Sega Genesis demonstrated was it wasn't just kids that like video games, basically kind of like the 4 to 12-year-old set, but teenagers liked video games. So by selling, you could make video games and market it to them, and you do really well. Next slide, please. And then you had a game called Wolfenstein that came out. And Wolfenstein was really innovative in that this game was free. And you could put this on a floppy disk. You could make copies of it and give it to your friends. But you could, and they gave you a couple of levels. You're this guy who's running around, you've been captured by the Nazis, and you're trapped in their castle, and you break out of your jail cell and get to go kill all the Nazis and get your escape to freedom. The first 3 levels were given away, but if you sent a check to the company that made it, they would send you the rest of the levels. And this way of distributing games, kind of like by giving someone a little bit of something for free and see if they want the rest of it, was super duper duper successful. And this company went on to make on a ton of very innovative games, but they didn't have to go through stores. They basically used the players themselves were their distribution network. Next slide, please. And Richard Bartle is a anthropologist and who also studies technology, and he loved video games. In the 1990s, he identified personality types that really resonate with different kinds of games. So you have these kind of the axis between acting or interacting. Acting is like people who want to play against other players. Interacting is people kind of want to explore the game itself and kind of do stuff within the game, but they don't necessarily want to kind of do stuff with other players. Players are people who want to play with other people, and world is people who want to kind of play with the game itself. And basically, depending on like what the motivations and where people were, you had killers, and these are people who really want to compete against other people and win against them in video games. You have achievers. These are people who like doing stuff with other players, and they like doing things that no one else has ever done in video games. They like kind of like playing it in an innovative way and kind of finding tricks and things like that. Explorers kind of like finding tricks too, but they don't really care about playing with other players. They like trying to figure out, is there like secret areas they can find in the game? And socializers are people that play the game, but they're not really there to play with the game. They're there just to hang out with their friends, and being with their friends is the most important thing. And at the time, technology was so small that basically you could make video games. You could figure out what you could find one of these demographics to appeal to, but you couldn't appeal to everybody. Today, video games are so big and so broad. Video games can be designed that you can play them lots of different ways and appeal to all the different demographic groups. Next slide, please. So another thing that comes out is you have video games coming out much faster in the 90s on computer than on than other areas. You see a lot of innovation in the video games that come out on computers as opposed to video games that come out on Nintendo and Sega. It's just the distribution. It was just easier to distribute games on computers. But one of the things that happens when something was popular on computers, it would quickly get copied over by Nintendo and Sega, the people who had the cartridge video game systems. Next slide, please. And then the PlayStation 2 came out. PlayStation 2 is the best-selling video game system of all time. The guy who developed it said that his goal was to make a system so popular that his teenage son would rather play on the video game on that computer system, the video game system, than hang out with his girlfriend, which is kind of a watch out what you wish for, because you just might get it. But this video game system had it came to a time when the technology made it possible that a single game could appeal to lots of different kinds of people. And there were, I don't even remember how many titles were eventually released for the PlayStation 2. There were titles released basically for every demographic that played video games at this point. It wasn't just kind of teenage boys. It was for everybody. And it basically demonstrated if you make content for people, people will play it and people will buy that content. Next slide. Next slide one more time. You've got Halo. Halo came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And what Halo was is Xbox, Microsoft wanted to try and say, hey, mostly kind of nerdy people, tech guys, tech kids really interested in video games. What if we could get a whole new market? What if we could get athletes and jocks to play video games? So Halo was released, and it was really marketed as kind of like a big jock video game. Like the guys and they marketed to guys in fraternities. They had athletes and Dwayne Johnson and various other kind of action hero celebrity type people marketing this game and promoting this game. And what they found out is absolutely jocks and fraternity members, they love this game, and you could sell video games to them too. Next slide, please. All right, World of Warcraft. Oh boy. World of Warcraft is probably the beginning of super video game addiction. There's been a little bit before that, but basically we talked a little bit about kind of the game loops, where it's like you can do small activity, get a little bit of reward, medium activity, a big reward, or medium reward, and a huge activity, a gigantic reward. Well, World of Warcraft turned that up to 11. Basically, when you're playing this game, you kind of run around this continent, kind of fighting these different kinds of monsters and going on quests and helping out or being a bad guy, depending on which way you want to do it. The game is absolutely vast, and the game is designed so that there's so many things you could do in this game. You could make bandages for people. You could mine ore that people could use to make weapons. You can oh geez, you can kind of make you pick flowers and grow flowers and use these flowers for different things. In addition to just actually fighting monsters and doing other stuff. They set it up so no one was ever more than 4 or 5 minutes away from some minor reward in the game. You're never more than 10 minutes away from a medium-sized reward in the game, and you're never more than half an hour away from a really, really big reward in the game. And there's so many different kinds of things you could do. It was really, it was kind of like, oh, I could go do this. Oh, I could go do this. Oh, I could do this. Well, I could quit, but I'm so close to getting to this done. So I'll quit when I get this done. Oh, I did get this done, but there's so many other things I could do right now. So basically, people's brains are just flooded with getting these rewards for continuing to play, and this really demonstrated that people would kind of put the rest of their lives on hold for these rewards. Kind of this is the beginning of the awareness of limbic capitalism in video games, just kind of lighting up that limbic system. And this game is well over 20 years old at this point. Next slide. And then you've got Team Fortress. Team Fortress was a game whereas World of Warcraft, you had to buy a subscription. You played this game, you could play with other people on the internet. You downloaded the software on your computer, but had to connect to the internet so you could play with other people. Team Fortress was a game that originally came out. You had to buy the CD and put it in your computer, install it. But then they added you run around. It's a silly game. It's very cartoony. You run around, shoot people. That kind of technology has been around for at least 10 years. But what they did is they made a little store, and for $1, you could buy a silly hat for your character. It didn't make your character any better in the game, but it just, it looked funny. People loved this, and they were so successful with the store when they released the store that they stopped selling the game. They would give the game away. You could download the game for free, and basically what you were buying is you weren't simply buying you weren't simply downloading the game. You were downloading the store. Next slide, please. And then the iPhone comes out, and basically now we don't have to have a big computer. You don't have to have a Nintendo. You don't have to have a TV. You have your video game system in your pocket, so it's always with you. We get Farmville and the Farmville phenomenon, which really demonstrated that you can get people to play video games. I don't know how many of you guys played Farmville. My sisters and my mom played Farmville, so I played Farmville. Because the more people who played Farmville, the better off you were. But Farmville really kind of demonstrated that you could kind of have this kind of pyramid scheme and kind of put social pressure on people to play video games. Excuse me. And Farmville is kind of this online farm. You do different things, you make money. It's very, very silly, very, very cute. But you could also take care of each other's farms, and when you take care of each other's farms, you make more money. And the more friends you have playing, the more money you make, and the more kind of rewards you got in the game. And the social pressure that Farmville really featured in the game became baked into a lot of other games once it was seen to be as successful as it was in Farmville. Candy Crush comes out in 2012. I suspect a lot of people here know about Candy Crush. For a while, Candy Crush was making $1 million a day. It was making $1 million a day, not after expenses. And basically, the way this game worked is it's you've got to kind of match these three little objects on the screen. And they had a mathematician. The team that made it was actually a small group. They had a mathematician figure out how can we do this so it's actually pretty hard. And if you have 10 moves or 20 moves, can you get rid of all the candy that you need to get rid of on the screen in this many moves? Well, they set it up so it's almost impossible most of the time on a lot of screens to get through it once. But if you get through it, and you're so close, you're like a move or two away. For $1 or $2, they'll give you a bunch more moves. So people were just doing these things, these microtransactions, kind of like the hats in Team Fortress, and basically the video game industry was learning we can make as much or more money with these microtransactions as we can from selling the games for like 50, 60 bucks a pop. And Candy Crush, and people could play it on their phones, and people play it on their phones, they could play it for, 5, 10 minutes at a time, more or less than that. So it's really kind of easy to kind of squeeze that in. Candy Crush really showed that the mobile video games was a way to make a tremendous amount of money. In 2018, Apple Computer became the world's first $1 trillion company. And a lot of this is because of games like Candy Crush. Next slide, please. Fortnite comes out. I see the time. We're gonna speed up. Fortnite is a game that it took a lot. This is actually old now. They have an online store, and one of the things that happens, you see, there's going back, there's an island that you run around on. But one of the things that happens is when you have the game is watching every single player and every single version of the game run around the island, and there's all kinds of stuff to do in the island. So there's like tree houses and cities and hills and caves and stuff like that. And every week, the island gets shifted a little bit based on where people have been hanging out. If more people are doing certain things, then the island has a little bit more of that on the island. If people have not been in certain areas, there's a little bit less of it. So between season 1 and season 6, you can see how much the island evolved. Um, and it continues to evolve. And actually, there's many different islands now. Based on what kind of game you want to play, but the game watches players. Whereas if I played Mario Brothers when I was a kid, no one was watching me. There wasn't any internet that could connect to my Nintendo and watch me play. Games are watching people play now and putting more of the stuff in that people like and taking out stuff that they're not doing. Next slide. And one of the things that happened is Fortnite, or next slide after this. So Fortnite has these V-Bucks. And one of the things that happens is that, oh, you want a cool looking character. Well, first you can get the outfit, and then you've got to get their axe, then you've got to get their paraglider, and then you've got to get all these other things. So instead of having $1 or $2 that people are spending between $20 and $30 for kind of the main costumes that people can buy in Fortnite. And another thing that Fortnite does is they would have the costume there for maybe a couple hours, and then it would go away, and you'd never know if that costume is going to be back again. So it's kind of this impulse buy. If you don't buy it now, this cool costume is gone. So it's putting a lot of pressure on these kids, and the kids are in turn putting pressure on their parents. I got to have V-Bucks because I want to have this cool costume too. It's not like it's just sitting on this shelf at the store and they can order more of it. And when it's gone, it might come back in a couple of weeks. It might not come back ever. And you've got to be there. Even if it does come back, you've got to be there to buy it. You can't just like put an order in and when it shows up again, then you'll get it. You have to be there. Another reason to get people to log in. Next slide, please. All right, next slide. Sorry. And so one of the reasons why video games are trying to get people to spend so much time playing them is one of the things they figured out is the more time people spend playing video games, the more likely they are to spend money in the video games. If I play Fortnite like maybe once or twice a month for maybe like 10 minutes at a time, I'm probably not going to buy anything. But if I'm playing Fortnite 3 or 4 hours a day, almost every day of the week, I'm far more likely to want to spend money in Fortnite. So one of the reasons they make these games so addictive is they want people in them because the more often they're in, the longer they're in, the more likely they are to buy the little DLCs and add-ons to the game. And that's how they're making most of their money. Are there signs of hope? Yes. In 2022, there's an item called non-fungible tokens, which is going to be another way to make money off of people playing video games. This involved using crypto technology. And it got to the point where video game players finally said, enough is enough. This is silly trying to charge us for some of these things. We're not going to do it. And so that was nice because for literally over a decade, every time these little innovations came into games and kind of made it harder for people to do stuff, people kind of shrugged as like, oh, that stinks, but I'll keep on doing it. And then NTFs became the next thing, and finally people said, no, this is too much. We're getting too little value, and we're not going to do it. So there was a point where the companies had to take back some of their innovations because people just were not interested in doing that. Next slide. So are we in trouble? Yeah, we are absolutely in trouble. Tons of people play video games. They're designed to be addictive. They're designed to make people want to play them for at least 8 hours at a time. And in the United States, at least, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any laws passed restricting this. In fact, California had some laws that said that video game companies had to have some understanding of they had to have some protections for younger kids, so kids couldn't get stuck playing games. And they have some other laws about social media too. And I think last week, the video game and the social media companies' lawyers successfully got those laws blocked in California. So these people are making tons of money. They're hiring lawyers. Even when laws are made, they're using their lawyers to try and fight against these things because they're making so much money. So this is an issue. However, I think people are also getting more and more educated about how incredibly addictive these games are, and realizing it's not just like video games from the 80s with better graphics. They're understanding that these video games are designed to be addictive. And as people are become more aware, they become more aware of their own usage and the usage of their children, and they're putting more rules on it. They're not just letting kids just sit and play video games like we did when we were in the 80s and 90s, and we would get bored and go do something else. We realize that that's not how it works anymore. Next slide, please. Kids and teens need guardrails. If you might be familiar with the Donald Willicott quote, there's no such thing as a baby. A baby by itself is dead. There's always a baby mother pair. That's still true for teenagers and adults. Sorry, teenagers and kids. Kids need an adult brain and multiple adult brains if possible to help keep them safe. I don't think it's useful at this point to forbid kids from playing video games. They're just everywhere. There's no way. I'm a big fan of if a parent can't enforce a rule, do not make a rule, because the kids are going to find a way to get around it, and you're gonna lose some of your authority. So trying to tell kids they can't do it, it's not going to work. They're too it's too available. Kids can play video games at school on their phones and on their iPads. So what we need to do is teach kids and enforce rules on how to use video games safely, and just talk to kids. Help them understand, like, the people who make these video games, they want you to get addicted. I remember when I was a kid, my parents would say, like, yeah, Ruffles and all these chips and stuff like that, they do taste really good. They want you to eat them, and they want you to buy as much as you can, because you don't want to just have one bag. You want to have a bunch of bags. That's how they make money. Um, I don't think telling kids this stuff is going to stop them from playing video games, but kids and teenagers are going to have an understanding, like, oh, the reason I want to play this is because they want me to, they want my money. That's really what this is about. And it's going to help them develop good habits, and it's going to help them have kind of a good idea of what's going on. And also, playing video games with the kids is a great way to socialize with the kids. I had wonderful times and continue to have wonderful times playing Minecraft with my girls, playing Mario Kart with my girls. And all kinds of other stuff. And it's a great way to just kind of sit and, you can play the video game and also have chat about what's going on at school, what's going on with their friends. What are they thinking about for the summer, things like that. So I think video games can be a great way for parents and other adults to connect with kids, because it's going to be something. There are very few things. If you say, like, hey, do you want to help me set the table? Do you want to help me cook? I feel like I've got like a 50% buy-in on that one. If I say, like, hey, you want to play Mario Kart? I think I've got like a 98% buy-in on that with the girls. Next slide, please. Um, Help kids understand that real life is not like video games. Video games are so wonderful at giving us so much wonderful feedback constantly, and helping them understand, like, yeah, crummy things happen in real life. And if you're kind of have this expectation that you're always going to be at the same level of happiness that you're at when you play video games, um, that's just that's not going to work very well. You're not going to be able to get around. You're not going to be able to get through things. Help kids learn healthy behaviors. Help them have lots of different hobbies. Help them and really encourage them when they like something. Give them opportunities to do those things, and really, really praise them and cheer them on. Because kids love it. I love the quote. I think it was Dinah Bomrand who said, "A child's favorite toy is their parent." Spending time with our kids, that's really, 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 really what they want. I think one of the things that video games try and do is they try and work hard to kind of be a surrogate parent sometimes, and give kids kind of this attention that they're craving. But I think most children would really still rather hang out with their parents if they can get their parents' undivided attention, and they can get their parents really buy into what they're doing, than even play a video game. Next slide, please. All right, that's it. So that is a lot of information. Thank you very much for sticking around. What questions do you have? And what comments do you have? And thank you very, very, very much, Shane, for helping out with the slides. I really, really appreciate it.
I just want to chime in real quick. Thank you for bringing me back down memory lane as far as a lot of those video games. And I didn't have Doom in there, but yeah, a lot of those ones. I'm like, yeah, I was right there with you playing
There's a
them. So,
longer one that does have Doom, and I talk
oh,
about
okay.
id, but this is the 1 hour version of the presentation. So
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Opinion of video game addiction litigation. Um, I mean, I think it depends. I saw, I think it was Seattle Public Schools sued someone for video games and how it's like damaging their kids. And right now, I feel like the pendulum has swung so far over on the other side. It kind of reminds me of the tobacco legislation when they're saying like, listen, tobacco is causing all kinds of healthcare problems that, insurance companies and people have to pay for. Tobacco, this is a very predictable side effect of tobacco. Tobacco companies have to help pay for some of this healthcare. It shouldn't just come from the consumers themselves. Um, I think as an econ major, we talk a lot about the person who's like ideally in economics, there's kind of this idea the person who's incurring the expense should be the one that pays the cost. Um, and I think kind of based on that, if someone's causing a problem, they should be the responsible party for paying for the solution. And to the degree that's possible, I think that's fantastic. I think that I think kids are very clearly suffering because of video games. It's not everyone. It's kind of like not everyone suffers because alcohol is available, but there are a lot of people who do suffer because of alcohol, and it causes problems in our society. So I think if there's some ways to make video game manufacturers more accountable, have some limits on that they're required to use, or make it very easy for parents to set up for themselves. I think that would be a step in the right direction. But I think right now they're just so they're in a situation where they can make so much money in the United States. They're kind of going hog wild, and I think they don't really care about the individuals. Something else years ago, is this wonderful conference in California, and it was a child and adolescent conference, and there were a lot of people from California there. And I was talking to folks, I was talking to some people from Silicon Valley, and I said, what issues do you see with your kids? And they're like, oh man, at San Jose, we've got all kinds of problems. We've got kids who are feel if they're not millionaires by the time they're 18, that they're nothing. If they don't get into a Harvard or some Ivy League school, that they're a failure for life. We've got this incredible perfectionism and incredible pressure. One problem we do not have in San Jose is screen addiction. No one's addicted to screens because no one here lets their kids anywhere near a PlayStation or an iPad. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that you know they don't let the people who make these things don't use it and don't let their kids use it. So yeah, these things, they know that they're dangerous. They know what they're doing. And I think we need to kind of figure this out because this is going to hurt this is injuring us as a country. Esports teams. I think esports is pretty cool. I think it's like anything else. I think if people are doing these things and they're not able to do parts of engage other parts of their life, that's a problem. But I think esports, there's a game called League of Legends, which is kind of the king of esports right now. Fortnite is up there too. If people like those things, I think calling it sports is a little silly. But I think that it can be a great team activity, and it can be a great opportunity for kids to do something that they love. But once again, I just want to make sure that people are having well-rounded lives and not using, oh, I'm an e-athlete, so I have to play video games all the time. I'd be worried that they could use that to kind of rationalize behavior that might not be in their best interest. But I think esports, I think that's fine. Let's see, opinion on the development of frontal lobe when playing too much versus cognitive benefits. I mean, there are games that have cognitive benefits. I think Minecraft is a fantastic game. There's a game called EVE Online, which is basically kind of exploring outer space, and it's super complicated and really, really interesting. I think that's a great game. Pokemon Go, which I have on my phone, and my girls and I play Pokemon Go. I think that is a fantastic game. And if to play Pokemon Go, you have to walk around. You pretty much have to play with other players and interact with other people. So the way you design games can promote things. I think a lot of the design that we see today, though, is not necessarily encouraging kind of really useful troubleshooting behavior, or kind of pro-social skills. But it absolutely can. It depends on the video game, and I think it really comes down to how are people doing in their lives overall. because I think we can play some brainless dumb games and have a good time, and it's not that big of a deal, and we can kind of play, games that have more of a cognitive benefit, but we get stuck in those too, and we might be only really, we might be kind of locked out of the rest of our lives because we're playing a game, even if there are positive things about that game. Are there games that I would really suggest to be avoided? Oh boy, yeah, there are some really icky games out there. And I think parents should really pay attention. I can't remember what's the most recent Grand Theft Auto. It's been out for like maybe a decade now. Um, but oh geez, I want to say it's like Grand Theft Auto 6 or something like that. It opens like the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, there's what they call a cinematic, where you're not playing, you're kind of watching a movie. There's some incredibly inappropriate stuff that happens in the first 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, this is stuff that when I was a kid, this would definitely be like rated X. And so a little kid who's popping this video game into their computer or their PlayStation, wildly inappropriate. I couldn't believe when I saw the introduction cinematic for Grand Theft Auto 6. I could not believe that that was something that was in this massively popular video game, because I'm sure tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids have seen the introduction to Grand Theft Auto 6, which I think is too bad. I think people should play video games with their kids. I think that people should look online. There's a really great resource, and I can't remember what they're called. Is it Media Matters, something like that. There's a place that does kind of these parent reviews of movies and TV shows and video games. And I'm sure if you Google it, it'll be near the top of the Google results. But I think that's a really, really good resource to use to kind of find out what's going on here. And they often rate a bunch of different things. They talk about kind of, sexuality and drug use and kind of rewarding antisocial behavior and, violence and all kinds of, so it's not just kind of like one dimension they're looking at. They're looking at several different dimensions. They have usually really nice in-depth reviews of the games and descriptions of the type of content in the games. I think that's a really nice resource to use to determine, is this an appropriate game for my family? But yes, are there games that should be avoided? Yeah, the list of games that are probably inappropriate for kids and some teenagers is long. But then there's tons of really great games for everybody too. But there's definitely some inappropriate games out there, no question. What are thoughts about how kids struggle socially? I think there are definitely people who are interacting over video games today, and I think that can be really fantastic. There are tons of kids that play Minecraft together, tons of kids who play Fortnite together, and I think that can be great. It depends on the group you're playing with, and it depends on how things are going. League of Legends it's kind of a team game where it's kind of a group of 5 people versus a group of other 5 people, and you have kind of these magic warriors, and they're trying to blow up each other's base. You kind of go back and forth. It's kind of a cute game. And one of the things that they did in League of Legends is they used to have a huge problem with people talking really viciously to each other. One of the things they built into the game is at the end of every game, you get to rate the people on your team and say like who was most helpful and who is like the biggest cheerleader and who is the best leader and who who had the most teamwork and stuff like that. So suddenly you're changing the incentives instead of like something going wrong and then people yelling and swearing at the people they're playing with. Everyone's kind of trying to get those rewards, because the more of those positive behavior rewards you get, the more kind of status you get in the game, the more other kind of benefits you get in the game. So I think it kind of depends on the setting, it depends on the group of people. But yeah, I think especially now, there are definitely some kids who are getting some real benefit. And I think where the rubber hits the road is how is this individual kid doing? Is the individual kid, are they able to spend some good time with some friends online? I don't think you have to know people in real life. I think you can meet people in online and they can be good people. I think that definitely happens. But I think also, how is this person doing? Are they doing their chores? Are they doing well in school? Are they getting along with their brothers and sisters and neighbors and things like that? I think you have to look at all of that to determine if the kid's doing well and see if video games are a positive or negative impact on the child's life. Any other questions? Any other comments? Let's see. Are there more bears? Okay, yeah. So, I think how are there many? Is there a better age for kids to play video games? I think the American Pediatric Association say that kids should not be on screens until they're like 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that. And I think that's a good idea. These iPads are designed to be operated by 2-year-olds, because iPads are not our point of sale devices. iPads exist to buy apps and make money for the app makers and Apple Computer. Because every time someone spends $1 on the Apple App Store, Apple Computer gets 33 cents of it. That's why Apple's was the first $1 trillion company. They were the world's first $2 trillion company, the world's first $3 trillion company. They're just making money hand over fist. Unfortunately, I feel like Apple is kind of like the new tobacco company, because they are just promoting and publishing these incredibly addictive products. And I really love Apple. So it makes me sad that Apple is acting the way that it is now. I think they do some really, really amazing things, but I think they also really promote addictive behavior. Um, and I think kids. I think the earlier kids start with games, and the more their brain kind of glues into video games, the less interesting the rest of the world is. So making sure kids, especially young kids, are not on screens as much as possible, I think is really, really helpful. But it also parents are really busy, and I think you got to kind of balance this out, because I think parents, if they need to relax, if they need to take a breath, letting kids be on screens while parents take 15 minutes and just kind of catch their breath or something like that. I think that's actually something that parents should do and is useful to do. But once again, it really comes down to how is the family doing? How's that individual doing? And that's where the rubber really hits the road. Anything else?
Yeah, any other questions from our attendees or the panelists? This has been really educational for me because I didn't play video games growing up. And I had not a clue how they had escalated and become more and more sophisticated and created more and more addiction as time went on. And I'm pleased to hear that the hope in there is that we can use really good parenting skills, like,
Absolutely.
to help our kids get through it. I mean, it doesn't become a stigma because you don't put your kid in the position of not knowing, not playing, etc. But you help them make choices. And I think that that's really good parenting, no matter what type of potentially addicting thing that we're doing. And there are lots of potentially addicting things out there. So, knowing that we need to be good parents, and we need to be helping ourselves remember the same things. Oh, here's another question. Great presentation. And have you heard of Rainbow Six Siege?
I have heard of Rainbow Six Siege. I have not played it. I know of it. A lot of my clients love that game. This is a game. Tell me if I'm wrong. Basically, there's two different teams, and one's like a group of terrorists, and one's a group of like special forces, and they're trying to kind of either keep people from being rescued from a building or rescue the hostages, or else like there's like a bomb or something. The terrorists are trying to keep the bomb from being deactivated, and the special forces people are trying to find the bomb and deactivate it or something like that. I know people really love this game. It is super violent. It is super violent. It looks like military people shooting each other. But I think if kids are, especially teenagers, if they're aware enough to understand that like this is entertainment, that this is like watching, a movie, and this is not regular behavior, I think that's fine. These games are so detailed though, today. It's not like kind of, it was very cartoony and cute, and it's really easy to kind of not feel this is real. Some kids, especially or more sensitive kids, might look at this stuff today and feel very scared. Because it is violent, but some kids might see it and be like, this is really exciting and awesome. I love this. So I think it depends on the person. But yeah, I know a lot of people really like this game. I know it's very, very popular.
Okay, well, Kelly told me, Dr. Nathan, that you have another commitment at 7:30. And so I want to be respectful that you might need a couple of minutes in between. And so I want to give you our great appreciation for the presentation you did and for squeezing it into your busy schedule.
Oh, no problem.
Lots of
Happy to do it. Thank you for
comments.
having me. Thank you very much.
Quite all right. And you never know, we may tap you in the future for some additional information. We're always looking for presenters that speak to our issues and our needs. So
You bet.
thank you very
bet.
much.
Well,
Thanks
thanks
everyone
again
for
for having me.
attending. Yeah, keep an eye on the video online. We'll be back.
All right.
Okay.
Take care,
Take care,
everyone.
all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.